You are listening to Inspired Caring, episode number 96. Hello, welcome to Inspired Caring. I'm your host, Michelle Magner. If you are caring for an older family member, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I bring insight, tips, inspiration, and strategies to help you care for the people that you love without losing yourself along the way. Having cared for both of my grandmothers, I've helped manage everything from hospital stays, households full of belongings, to navigating senior living and end-of-life care. And I've worked in senior living as a result of that experience, serving my residents and their families as they've been on this journey too. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Inspired Caring. Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about making decisions. And I looked up the words choice and decision just because I was starting to get a little mixed up on those things. The definition of choice is an act of selecting or making a decision with two or more possibilities, and decisions are a conclusion or resolution. So I'm going to use the words a little bit interchangeably here, but ultimately, we're more focused on how you make decisions and make a choice versus getting tied up in the nuances of the definitions. So we are making roughly 35,000 decisions every day. 35,000. And it's just no wonder that we are all exhausted. The American Medical Association has an article on decision fatigue that I will put in the notes for you. Psychiatrist Dr. McLean said decision fatigue is the idea that after making many decisions, your ability to make more and more decisions over the course of the day becomes worse. The more decisions you have to make, the more fatigue you develop, and the more difficult it can become. And it especially or specifically outlines that decision fatigue is exhausting, mentally draining, and causes anxiety and brain fog. And in my estimation, it feels like there are three general buckets or categories that our decisions fall into. They may be tiny, like blowing your nose, scratching your face, turning on or off a light, whether to sit down or stand. So these tiny little decisions are just generally a no-brainer because they're usually determined by a physical need or an immediate purpose. Then there are these medium decisions. What to wear for the day, what to eat for every meal of the day, whether or not to pour that glass of wine, buy the shoes, go for a walk, turn on Netflix, which way to drive home. And I think this is the category where we spend most of our time. So there's no maybe huge immediate outcome or consequence from it, but there's definitely a compound effect happening over time that is leading us in a certain direction. And these decisions are freaking never ending and chip away at us all day long. So that medium bucket. And then the larger decisions have more weight, more importance, potentially, for sure, bigger consequences. Like whether we're considering taking a job, whether or not to move, who to marry, if we should get divorced, deciding to have children, adopt a pet, etc. So we make fewer of these decisions because they're bigger, and because they're big, we stew on them, and they have potential to be major disruptors or distractions in our lives for these big chunks of time. And not only do we put tremendous bandwidth on making the decision, oftentimes you're just expending all this huge, big, tremendous energy making the decision and evaluating if it was the right one or not, and rolling that over and over in your head about what would have happened if you had chosen the other way, or debating if you made the right decision. And of course, we know for sure that not making a decision is a decision. So if you think you're avoiding something, know that by not engaging in a certain direction by choice, you are still making a decision. And that's okay if that's where you're at and where you need to be, if you just need to pump the brakes. But just be aware of that. Mel Robbins talks about the first decision of the day many people make is to hit snooze on their alarm. And she really encourages us to knock it off. Get up. When your alarm clock goes off, you have made with your prefrontal cortex a decision the night before on what time you want to get up the next day. So when the alarm goes off, do it. Get up. There may come a point when a decision has to be made. Like oftentimes, a decision is forced because it's just a time of day decision or out of necessity. So, for example, what to eat for dinner. If you are going to take time for yourself or not, you may find yourself at that crossroad where either you're going to have to pick option A or B. Maybe B is the one that you think is going to be a best fit for you, but you want to people please somebody, so you pick option A. In the course of this caregiving journey, there are definitely decisions that can arise about living arrangements, courses of treatment, whether or not to engage with hospice. Some decisions definitely feel easier than others, especially with certain input, like a doctor saying we're out of options. Like it just really starts to reduce the decisions that need to be made. Something to keep in mind is that some of us are just wired to make decisions more effortlessly. So while others may need more time or information to make a decision, maybe you can just do it quickly. And recognizing this can help you calm down if you are making a joint decision with someone. Just respecting how the other person decides things can help you manage your expectations. So if you're a fast decision maker, don't just pitch something out there to somebody who is not and expect them to make a quick decision if that is not their process. Most of the time, I am able to make pretty quick decisions. I rarely have regrets. I just contemplate my options, choose, then go. And my husband is definitely more strategic. He does research, and we need both of these approaches in our life. That is what is helping us have a successful life. Years and years ago, my grandmother was in a grocery store and came across a woman standing in the cereal aisle who was crying. And my grandma went and asked her if she was okay. And she had just moved to the US from another country, and she wasn't sure what cereal to buy. There were too many choices, and it was completely overwhelming. And I admit to you that I have had days where by the end of the day, I am absolutely shot. I am tapped out, and I have called my husband crying from the grocery store saying, I have no idea what to pick up for dinner. So it's not just the exhaustive number of choices that we're making, it's how we're making the decisions. And obviously, if we're able in a calm moment to use our prefrontal cortex to make decisions, that will serve us better. We also, I believe, need to give ourselves credit for decisions we have made, and um, just showing up for ourselves, just giving ourselves credit where credit is due. Oprah talks about failure isn't something to take personally, it's just a redirection. I really like that. So let's talk about how you're making decisions. And is the way that you are making decisions serving you? In other words, how do you make that decision? Do you know what your decision making process looks like? I think oftentimes we just end up on autopilot just out of habit, and we we don't see the patterns that we are creating in our own life. But so unpacking that a little bit can really benefit you, especially when these bigger decisions need to be made. How do you know, or do you know, when you feel your best and make your best decisions? Some people like a time crunch, some people do not. So take a minute just to reflect on a recent decision you made and how is that process for you? Were you quick? Did you research online? Did you call 5 friends to ask what they would do? If you are talking to other people, do you like the results that they're producing in their life and guiding you to create in yours? That's a really good question. Because if you're looking at somebody and things seem to be falling apart for them, is that your best advisor? I would say probably not. Some things are coming to mind on options for decision making. So see if any of these for you help you move the needle on something. So you're going to think on your own what your process looks like. And then here are some options for you to maybe try something different. Planning in advance. We talk about this a couple times already. Your prefrontal cortex, specifically your executive function, is designed to help set you up for success. Whether or not we honor those decisions is a different episode, but especially for people who need the time, if you can see what may lie ahead or anticipate what's coming, having that time for pre planning is a great idea. Because in the heat of the moment, especially when some of these decisions that are going to be need to be made in your life, the emotions just are running really high at the time of a decision. And it's so helpful to have an idea or roadmap of what you thought you would want in that moment. And of course, it can be subject to change. Some examples would be if you're looking for home health care, asking for a friend for referrals on who they have maybe used or search online reviews. If you know someone is going to need home health at some point, start looking now. Don't wait. You don't want to be put in that position. If you're looking for senior living, go to medicare.gov and look at reviews where you can narrow it down by geography. I'm going to include the website for there in the notes for you. Check in with your gut. I think one of the things that I do, it's not a regret, but I tend to kick myself in the tush about is when my gut tells me one thing and I make a decision that wasn't aligned with that. And then in hindsight, you're like, I knew to pick the other way. So do a gut check before you make your decision. And then like your reasons for why you made a decision. Because then when your mind goes squirrely and starts to try and take you to the dark side and makes you want to second guess everything, if you can get back to the why you made a decision a certain way, that will help you reassure yourself. So have your back on that decision. And I know it can be hard to make the call on something and to choose a path. But the place I see the suffering is when someone makes the decision and then toils back over all the options and then picks something, second guesses it. And we're just operating at the speed of information. You're making the best decision in the moment with the information you have. So if you have to shift gears, you will address that when the time comes. So just be reassured you are doing the best you can. Maybe you do need the pressure of time and do better with split second decisions. Are you a big procrastinator? I definitely have procrastination tendencies. And then boom, pick, choose, go forward. I was at a conference and the keynote speaker there were hundreds of us in the audience, and we were completely mesmerized with his keynote. And he's a musician as well, and his artistry. And he stepped off the stage, and I just instinctively beeline straight over to where he was selling his books and said, I want you to mentor me." He just laughed and said, "Send me an email. Tell me what that looks like." And we've been connected ever since. So sometimes a split second decision, just following your gut, go for it, is good. Have a decision wingman. And we talked earlier about, do you like how other people that you are calling or referencing how their life is going? And you don't want your wingman to necessarily tell you what to do because ultimately you get to make the choice, but they're dialed in to how you make your decisions and your values and priorities, and they're guiding you back to yourself. Like that's the whole point of a coach. Recognize that making decisions is not as easy for everyone. Each of us may have a different decision making process. I mean, that includes your family members, your colleagues, your friends. So many people get really frustrated with the people that they're caring for because they're not making decisions or moving the needle on things. And I ask them, how have they made decisions in the past? Like, are you expecting someone to do something or make decisions in a way that they have never done their entire adult lives? We have to be aware of that and respect that. And leaning on third party advisors or professionals to help you is a really good idea. You are not alone. And we've talked about this. There's so many episodes of this podcast where I'm interviewing industry experts on the services they provide. So you can go back and there's a specific thing that you're needing to make a decision on, go back and listen to one of those episodes. We learned from that journal article that by the end of the day, we're just tapped out, we're exhausted. So make important decisions earlier in the day. The other thing I like to do is to sleep on it. So if you're struggling to make a decision, maybe write it on a sticky note, put it in a journal, put it next to your bed and sleep on it. And then just see what your first thought is about it when you wake up in the morning. Because your brain is noodling on things in your subconscious overnight. And in those waking, hazy moments, you may actually have some clarity. I also really like driving for making decisions and water, like taking a shower. There's actually science behind those two things. So those can help you have some clarity. I'd like you to just consider the thought that there is no wrong choice here. Yes, the decision will have different outcomes, and we're making 35,000 choices every day. And our lives turn into this super overly complex choose your own adventure book. Even on big decisions like a career change, moving, just that thought from I don't want to make the wrong decision to I will be okay either way can take some of the heat off. I think sometimes it's the consequences of the decision that start to help or not help. Opposite. They feel so weighty and overwhelming. Reduce the options that you're choosing from. And I have a module on minimizing inside this Inspired Caring program that talks about this. But like if you're thinking about what to wear for the day, maybe just pick a color. If it's something to eat, choose like hot or cold, sweet or savory. So reduce your choices. How can you minimize the complexities in your life? Scaling back in any area will begin to alleviate this burden. I eat like pretty much the exact same thing for breakfast nearly every day. Weekends, I change it up and have steel cut oats. But every weekday, I'm pretty much eating the same thing. Steve Jobs wore a black turtleneck. Having an uncluttered environment helps your brain not feel this incessant to-do list when you're looking around the room. We get overextended because we overcommit ourselves. And I mean, this is like a whole area for us to unpack together. But over the years, I have realized that words of affirmation are my love language. So I have happily jumped on any committee or event or outing that came my way because with just a few nice words, I was hooked. Like, hey, do you want to do it? Oh my gosh, they're inviting me. Yes, yes, yes. But when I overcommitted myself, I stressed myself out. I totally would show up 100% and get it done, but it sometimes was at my own expense. And I think this is impacting our decisions and how we're making decisions. And we're deciding to do things that maybe are not in our best interest. We cannot give what we do not have. We cannot pour from an empty cup. So figure out how you make decisions, reduce the decisions you have to make. Planning is really helpful. It really takes some of the heat off because if you've thought through how you want something to go in the moment, you may again shift gears, but at least you went in with a plan. So I love you, and you are doing a great job. I see you. Keep up the good work. Have a beautiful week, and I will see you next week.